Gen Z cutting overall spend by 13% between January and April of this year. That's according to PwC. This comes as younger consumers face cost of living challenges, economic uncertainty, and inflation. And here with more insight on this age group is Gen Z researcher and author Jason Dorsey. Jason, it's good to see you. So on this jobs day, Jason, all right, we didn't have the jobs report, but your research says something interesting here, talking about Gen Z, and it caught my eye, Jason. It says they aren't just afraid of losing their job, they're even more afraid of not finding another one. What is driving that exactly, Jason?
Yeah, it's a scary time to be in Gen Z financially and in the workforce. You know, Gen Z feels like it's hard to get a job. It's very hard to get hired, as you've probably seen. But what nobody's talking about is those that have jobs are very worried that if they lose those jobs, they'll be like many of their friends and can't get another job. And the result of that is not only are they trying to be more cautious at work and keep their job, but they're also trying to build up emergency accounts, which nobody's talking about. They're trying to get a few $100s, $1,000, $2,000, whatever they can sort of set aside, because in the chance that they do get laid off, which, you know, we see the numbers, they're worried the time it will take them to get their next job is going to be much longer than in the past. And as a result of that, they're trying to save up to buffer that. You know, the other thing we're seeing that's not being talked about is the parents of Gen Z are frequently still supporting this generation. Lots of different ways they're doing that, from the traditional gas card, or you can live with me longer, to other ways that they're trying to help them out financially, pay down credit cards. But what's interesting is those same parents are now increasingly under financial stress. And as a result of that, they're not able to help those Gen Z children, who are frequently adults, in the way maybe they did before. And you put it all together, and it's exactly why Gen Z is paring back on their spending. And it's more than just inflation. They're getting sticker shock from healthcare. You know, they're finding out these premiums could go up. At the same time, rents going through the roof and many of these places. It's a really scary time. And one of the things we're seeing is that Gen Z is feeling a bit of a dislocation within the generation, where you have one part of the generation that feels like they're able to continue moving forward. They were able to get that job somehow, and they're sort of making their way the best they know how. And then their peer group, same age, could be even from the same town, is not able to pull themselves forward. And that's creating some challenges within the generation. So it's a really scary time for Gen Z. I think this is going to be as bad as it was for young adults entering the workforce during the great financial crisis.
And Jason, just remind me, when we talk Gen Z, what ages are we talking about exactly?
Yeah, great question. So at our research center, we study not just Gen Z, but every generation. In the US, Gen Z is up to age 29. So think about Gen Z as all the 20-somethings that you see in the US, and then goes down probably to the mid-teen years. And so we'll look at everything from workforce participation rates. Are they getting their driver's license, which they're not? Are they getting these summer jobs or seasonal jobs, which are increasingly not seeing? So we'll sort of look at that spectrum from that upper teenage all the way to their late 20s, because that really, they have the autonomy to spend.
Jason, on this issue of Gen Z being worried about losing their job and even being more fearful of finding another one, is AI playing any role in that concern?
Yeah, AI and Gen Z is something we study a lot, and it's really interesting because Gen Z, more than any other generation, likes AI, trusts AI, expects to use AI, and on a daily basis uses AI. So on one hand, in their daily life, their habits and so forth, they're using AI, which is really wild. On the flip side, in the workforce, they're hearing, somewhat seeing, but certainly hearing that AI is keeping them from getting a job, getting promoted, getting more responsibilities. And really the gap that we're seeing when we think about Gen Z entering the workforce is that first year or two in the workforce is really important, and particularly when you're coming out of college. And so if you're not getting that job because of AI, there's certainly a resentment and a fear, and really a lot of questioning, which is fascinating about, was it worth it to go to college and get this degree, and now I can't even get a job, whereas if I was in the trades as a plumber, I'd have all these jobs. So I think there's a lot of conversations around that, but Gen Z is definitely worried about AI, not so much taking their jobs, but just making it really hard for them to get a foothold in their career and then be able to move up and really develop and learn those skills. You know, in our latest study, we found that a lot of Gen Z, a majority of Gen Z, believe that they need on-the-job experiences in order to learn the skills that will make them successful. So it's not that Gen Z doesn't realize they need these things. They see that. They just want those opportunities.
In terms of adding all this up, and their economic worldview, I thought this was interesting. You note that over 60% of Gen Z supports universal basic income, and most don't think they will ever be able to afford to retire, Jason?
That's correct. Yeah, both of those are from our latest study. And we've been studying universal basic income across generations for many years. The study we do every year is called the State of Gen Z. And every year, Gen Z's expectations and support of universal basic income continues to go up. It really took off during COVID. Obviously, the government sent checks, and then Gen Z saw that this was possible. Before that, people didn't really think it was as possible. So that really created the possibility. And now Gen Z, more than anyone else, thinks the federal government should provide a basic living wage to all adults in the US. Full stop, more than any other generation we study, millennials, Gen X, boomers, you name it. And then on the flip side, when we talk with Gen Z and in our studies, Gen Z does not believe that Medicare or any of these Social Security will exist for them in the future. Gen Z is the number one generation to believe they will have to ultimately support their parents because they think their parents are going to outlive their money. And Gen Z doesn't think they'll be able to buy a house, build wealth in all these ways. You put it together, and consistently, a majority of Gen Z says they do not believe they will be able to financially afford to retire. And I'm going to be very direct, probably get in trouble later. But if you're in your mid 20s and you don't think that you're ever going to be able to afford to retire, what does that impact? Everything. Savings, investing, how you approach work, your career, so many other decisions, because basically Gen Z views their financial retirement differently than other generations who still have some belief or are benefiting from Social Security and other programs.
I'll get you out of here on this, Jason. Is there a basic takeaway you would have to employers who are listening right now, maybe policymakers who are listening right now, about Gen Z based on the data and the research you do?
Yeah, I think Gen Z is very miscast. More than 7 out of 10 members of Gen Z in our latest study believe that being a loyal employee means you have to work at least 1 year at an employer, and a very large percentage still believe you have to work there 2 or 3 years. So I think people think young adults today don't want to work and don't have work ethic. That's just not true. They may have a different work style. They also bring the skills of AI that's just natural for them. Many of them won't remember a time before that. But Gen Z is really in a financially delicate or sensitive situation, and people aren't really understanding what that can mean long term. But if you enter the workforce and you can't get a job right away, or you're financially strapped, it can significantly delay your career and have all kinds of other knock-on effects that come from that. So to me, I think take a new look at Gen Z. They want to work. They bring skills that we need. They are trying to get jobs right now. It's a transformative time in the workforce. And if we could see the value they bring, I think we'll see where they can fit and how we can find that value really benefit every generation.